Picture this. A pregnant woman sits in a Manhattan conference room, tears streaming down her face as she signs away 3 years of her life. Her husband doesn't even look at her. He's too busy checking his Rolex, planning his wedding to a supermodel. She walks out with nothing. No home, no money, no proof she built a company worth millions. Just a baby in her belly and $2,000 in her bank account. The world calls her an upgrade, a cautionary tale, a woman who wasn't enough. But here's what they didn't know. 3 years later, that same woman walks back into a conference room. But this time, she's the one holding all the cards. And her ex-husband, he's about to sign over everything for $1. This is the true story of Maya Collins, the engineer they tried to erase, the mother they tried to break, and the woman who turned her worst nightmare into the comeback of a lifetime. What happened in those 3 years? How did she go from homeless and hopeless to powerful and unstoppable? Stay with me, because this story will change how you think about winning. The sleek conference room overlooked Lower Manhattan, all glass and steel, and the kind of quiet that money buys. Maya Collins sat across from her husband. No, her soon-to-be ex-husband. The distinction mattered now. Ryan Mercer adjusted the cuff of his Tom Ford suit, the Rolex on his wrist catching the afternoon light. He didn't look at her, not once. Outside, the city stretched beneath them, indifferent to the small death happening in this room. Maya's fingers trembled as she held the silver pen. 6 months pregnant, exhausted, she'd spent the morning convincing herself this was just a formality. A difficult conversation between two people who'd built something together and now needed to part ways. She'd been so stupid. Ryan's attorney, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost more than Maya's car, slid papers across the polished table. Mrs. Mercer, this is a straightforward business dissolution. The prenuptial agreement you signed is very clear. Maya's head snapped up. What prenuptial agreement? We never signed anything like that. The lawyer's expression didn't change. He produced a document, her signature sprawling across the bottom. Your wedding in Las Vegas, 3 years ago, you signed this at the after party. Maya stared at the paper. That night was a blur of champagne and celebration. She'd signed dozens of things. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photos for fans. I don't remember this. Nevertheless, it's legally binding. The lawyer tapped the document. You received no equity in Mercer Technologies, no intellectual property rights, no ongoing compensation. The room tilted. Maya had built the company's entire infrastructure. Every line of code, every system architecture, every technical decision. She'd worked 80-hour weeks while Ryan networked at Soho House and posed for magazine covers. Ryan, her voice cracked, tell them this is a mistake. He finally looked at her. His eyes were empty, like looking at a stranger. Let's keep this clean, Maya. I have a flight to Los Angeles this afternoon. He didn't mention why. Everyone already knew. The tabloids had been whispering about the model, Sloan Rivers, for months. Maya's lawyer, a court-appointed attorney who looked overwhelmed, leaned over. Without documentation proving your contributions, we have no grounds to contest. But I built everything. The authentication system, the database architecture, the API. Under whose GitHub account? Ryan's lawyer asked. Maya's stomach dropped. Ryan's. Everything had been under Ryan's account because he was the CEO, the face of the company. She'd never thought to protect herself. This is insane, she whispered. This is business, Ryan said, standing. He slid his iPhone into his pocket. Take care of yourself, Maya. Like she was a stranger, like she hadn't spent 3 years building his dream. The door clicked shut behind him. The sound was final, like a coffin closing. Maya's court-appointed lawyer gathered papers, clearly eager to leave. Do you need me to call someone? No, Maya's voice sounded distant, not her own. I'll walk. Outside, rain had started, the kind of cold October drizzle that soaked through everything. Maya stood on Madison Avenue, her worn coat doing nothing against the chill. Luxury storefronts surrounded her. Cartier, Dior, Tiffany. Each window reflected a version of the life she used to have. Her hand moved to her belly, feeling a faint kick. We'll be okay, she whispered to the baby. I promise. Then the flashbulb started. A photographer materialized from a doorway. "Mrs. Mercer, is it true he's marrying Sloane next month?" Maya froze. The world narrowed to that single question, that single moment of understanding. The divorce wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of her public humiliation. More cameras appeared. Questions shouted from all directions. She pushed through the crowd, rain mixing with tears, and realized the entire world had been watching, waiting for this moment. When she finally escaped into a subway station, her phone buzzed. A notification. Ryan Mercer and Sloane Rivers photographed leaving the Plaza Hotel, their engagement party in full swing. The post was time-stamped 30 minutes ago. He'd planned this, timed it. While she'd been signing away her life's work, he'd been celebrating with the woman who replaced her. Maya sat on a subway bench, commuters flowing past, and felt something inside her break. Not dramatically, quietly, the way foundations crumble before buildings fall. Her bank account showed $2,847. Her health insurance notification read, "Canceled." Her apartment lease was in Ryan's name only. She was 6 months pregnant, unemployed, and had just signed away 3 years of her life for nothing. The train arrived. She didn't board. She just sat there watching trains come and go, trying to figure out how she'd gotten here. When had she stopped from being Maya Collins, Stanford graduate and brilliant engineer, and become Maya Roberts, the woman too naive to protect herself? Her phone buzzed again. Diana, her friend from law school. The text was simple. "I saw the news. Where are you?" Maya stared at the message. She should respond, should ask for help, but the words wouldn't come. What would she even say? Instead, she stood, adjusted her coat, and walked up the subway steps back into the rain. Somewhere in this city was a shelter, a clinic, a way forward. She'd figure it out. She had to. For the baby kicking inside her, she had to. The Duane Reade on 23rd Street smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Maya stood in the pharmacy aisle, prenatal vitamins in hand. Her credit card declined for the third time. "Do you have another form of payment?" The cashier's voice was kind but tired. Maya dug through her wallet. $32 in cash. The vitamins cost $45. "Never mind, I don't need them." "You sure? You look..." The cashier stopped herself. Maya knew how she looked. 6 months pregnant, dark circles under her eyes, wearing the same clothes she'd worn to sign the divorce papers 2 days ago. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman falling apart. Outside, her phone buzzed with notifications. Every tech blog, every gossip site, every news outlet had picked up the story. The headlines were brutal. Ryan Mercer marries Sloane Rivers in Plaza Hotel ceremony. Tech CEO trades in for upgrade. From coder to catwalk, Ryan's new life. Someone had posted photos comparing her to Sloane. Maya pale and exhausted in old screenshots from company events. Sloane glowing and perfect on red carpets. The comments were worse than the headlines. "Career women scare men away." She let herself go. Upgrade achieved. Maya deleted Twitter, then Instagram, then every social media app. But the damage was done. The story had escaped the internet and entered reality. At the Williamsburg loft she'd considered home, the locks had been changed. Her belongings sat in trash bags on the sidewalk. Rain had soaked through everything. Her clothes, her books, the framed photo of her parents. A note was taped to one bag. "Lease in my name. Find somewhere else. R." No apology, no explanation. Just 11 words that erased 3 years. Maya dragged the bags to a nearby laundromat, paid $5 for a storage locker, and left everything behind. She couldn't carry it all. Couldn't carry any of it. She walked to Diana's apartment in the East Village, 42 blocks on foot because she couldn't afford the subway. Each step felt heavier than the last. Diana opened the door, took one look at Maya, and pulled her inside. "Jesus, when did you last eat?" "I don't remember." Diana made eggs, toast, coffee, basic things that felt like luxuries. "You're staying here. We'll figure this out. I can't afford a lawyer to fight the prenup. Then we document everything for later. Build a case slowly." But Maya knew the truth. Without proof of her contributions, without copyright registrations or Git commits in her name, she had nothing. Ryan had been careful, or maybe just lucky that she'd been too trusting. That night, cramping started. Sharp pains that stole her breath. Diana, Maya gasped. Something's wrong. Bellevue Hospital's emergency room was chaos. Screaming, bleeding, too many people and not enough help. Maya sat in a plastic chair for 2 hours before a nurse called her name. I'm having contractions. I'm only 28 weeks. The nurse checked her vitals, expressionless. Do you have insurance? I did. My husband, ex-husband, canceled it. We'll need a payment plan. $8,500 for the ER visit, more if you're admitted. Maya's world narrowed. I'm having contractions. My baby, we'll see you, but you'll need to arrange payment. Dr. Sarah Klein, the OB/GYN on duty, was different. She looked at Maya like she was a person, not a billing code. Let's worry about you first, finances later. The ultrasound showed the baby was okay, but Maya wasn't. Stress-induced contractions, blood pressure through the roof, dehydration. You need complete bed rest, Dr. Klein said. Who's your support system? Maya started to answer, then realized she didn't have one. Her parents were dead. Her friends had been Ryan's friends. Diana had her own life, her own problems. I don't have anyone. Dr. Klein's expression softened. Then we'll figure something out. But 2 weeks later, at 30 weeks, Maya's water broke at 4 in the morning in Diana's apartment. The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and fear. The emergency C-section happened so fast she barely remembered consenting. Then she heard crying. Tiny, weak, but alive. It's a girl, someone said. They let Maya hold her for 30 seconds before whisking her away to the NICU. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. So small, Maya was terrified to breathe too hard. We'll take good care of her, a nurse promised. Maya named her Zoe. It meant life. The first NICU bill arrived 3 days later. $12,000, then $45,000, then $150,000. By the time Zoe was stable enough to come home 2 months later, the total was $487,000. Maya stared at the number until it stopped meaning anything. She was discharged with a baby, a car seat donated by the hospital, and debt that would bury her for life. Diana tried to help, but she was a public defender drowning in her own cases. Maya couldn't keep staying on her couch. She found a studio in Sunset Park for $1,200 a month. The building smelled like mildew and the radiator clanked all night, but it was hers. Zoe cried constantly. Colic, the pediatrician said. Nothing to do but wait it out. Maya signed up for Uber, TaskRabbit, and Upwork. She coded at night while Zoe slept in her Moses basket, worked gigs during the day while Diana watched the baby, and survived on 4 hours of sleep and gas station coffee. The hospital sent collection notices, then threats. Then they sold her debt to a collector who called 15 times a day. Maya stopped answering her phone. 3 months passed like this, a blur of exhaustion and desperation. She was surviving, barely, but surviving wasn't living. Then came the Friday night that changed everything. Maya had worked 18 hours straight, Uber from 6 a.m. to noon, a TaskRabbit furniture assembly gig in the afternoon, coding for a client until midnight. She'd made $312, enough to pay rent and buy formula. On the N train home, exhausted beyond reason, she fell asleep. She woke at the last stop, Coney Island, 2:30 in the morning. The train was empty except for her, and her bag was gone. Her MacBook, her phone, her wallet, everything. Maya ran to the conductor. Someone stole my bag. File a police report. I need my laptop. It has all my work, my clients. File a police report. She stood on the empty platform as the train pulled away, rain starting to fall, and something inside her finally broke completely. Fuck, she screamed into the night. Fuck. No one heard. No one cared. She sank onto a bench and cried. Not quietly, not carefully, just cried until she had nothing left. That's when she heard footsteps. A man in an expensive suit, completely out of place at a Coney Island subway station at 3 in the morning, stopped a few feet away. Are you okay? He asked. Then immediately, sorry, that's a stupid question. You're clearly not okay. Maya looked up through tears. He had kind eyes, tired but kind. Do I look okay? She snapped. Then softer, sorry, I'm not usually, it's fine. He hesitated. There's a diner nearby, open all night. Can I buy you coffee? You don't have to explain anything. You just shouldn't be alone right now. Maya knew she should say no, should go home to Zoe, should not trust strange men at subway stations. But she was so tired of being alone. Okay, she whispered. Coffee. Neptune Diner was the kind of place that existed in every city but belonged to none of them. Fluorescent lights, cracked vinyl booths, a Greek waitress who'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing. The man ordered 2 coffees and a plate of fries. You need to eat something. Maya wanted to argue, but her stomach betrayed her, growling loud enough to hear. When had she last eaten? Breakfast yesterday, maybe. I'm James, he said. Portland. Like the city? It came out before she could stop it. He smiled. My dad thought he was being clever. Irish immigrant humor. It was so absurd, Maya almost laughed. Almost. I'm Maya, Collins. Not Roberts anymore? She froze. How do you know that? James's expression shifted, embarrassed. I recognized you from the news. The Mercer divorce. He raised his hands. I'm not a stalker, I swear. I work in venture capital. I almost invested in his company, Round B funding. But you didn't. No, due diligence showed the tech was brilliant, but the CEO couldn't explain how any of it worked. That was a red flag. He met her eyes. The back-end architecture was elegant, scalable. The authentication system alone was worth millions. Ryan Mercer didn't build that. Maya felt something crack in her chest. You know that? Everyone in the industry knows. Well, everyone paying attention. Then why? Her voice broke. Why did no one say anything? James was quiet for a moment. Because proof and knowledge aren't the same thing. And because guys like Ryan are very good at taking credit. The waitress brought coffee. Maya wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the heat sink in. What happened tonight? James asked gently. The whole story spilled out. The divorce, the baby, the debt, the stolen laptop. 3 months of hell in 10 minutes. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, he pulled a business card from his wallet. Portland Ventures. I run a small fund. We need a technical consultant. Part-time, flexible hours, $15,000 a month. Maya stared at the card like it might disappear. Why would you hire me? You don't know me. I know your work. I know you built something worth hundreds of millions and got nothing for it. I know talent when I see it. I don't have a laptop anymore. We'll provide one and a phone. It was too good, too convenient. What's the catch? No catch. I need someone who understands blockchain infrastructure and scalable systems. You're overqualified, honestly. Maya wanted to cry again, but from relief this time. $15,000 a month. She could pay down the medical debt, get a better apartment, buy Zoe clothes that fit. When can I start? Monday. Come by the office. We'll set you up. They talked until dawn. About code, about startups, about the industry's casual cruelty toward women. James mentioned his late wife once, briefly. Emily, she died 2 years ago, cancer. I'm sorry. Me too. When they finally left the diner, Sunrise was painting Brooklyn pink and gold. James called her an Uber, paid for it before she could protest. See you Monday, Maya Collins. She watched his town car disappear, card clutched in her hand, and for the first time in months felt something like hope. The next 3 months were a blur of better things. Maya worked for Portland Ventures, consulting on potential investments, reviewing technical specs, interviewing founders. The work was interesting. The money was life-changing. She paid down the medical debt. $487,000 became $420,000, then $350,000. Progress, slowly. She moved to a better apartment in Astoria. 2 bedrooms, working radiator, no roaches. Zoe had her own room with a crib Diana bought at a discount. Zoe smiled for the first time, rolled over, started babbling. Normal baby things that felt like miracles. Maya got health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Not great, but better than nothing. She saw James 3 times a week for work meetings. They became 4 times, then 5. Coffee meetings that lasted too long. Conversations that veered from technical specs to personal stories. He told her about Emily, how they'd met in Boston, both scholarship kids at Harvard, how cancer had stolen her in 6 months, how he'd buried himself in work because grief was too heavy to carry. Maya told him about her parents, the car accident when she was 19, how she'd put herself through Stanford on scholarships in spite, how she'd met Ryan and believed in him completely. "I was so stupid," she said one night over coffee. "You were trusting." That's different. In December, James invited her to Portland Ventures' holiday party. Maya bought a dress from Rent the Runway, the first time she'd dressed up in a year. At the party, investors asked her opinion on deals. She fit in, belonged. James's partner Marcus cornered her by the bar. "He talks about you constantly. Maya said this, Maya thinks that." "We're just colleagues," Marcus grinned. "Sure you are." At the end of the night, James walked her to her Uber. Snow was falling, soft and quiet. "I had a good time," Maya said. "Me too." James hesitated. "I know this is complicated, the work thing, the timing, everything, but I like you. More than professionally." Maya's heart raced. "I like you too." He leaned in. She did too. Their lips almost touched. James pulled back. "I'm sorry, I'm not good at this. I haven't done this since." "It's okay," Maya said softly. "We don't have to rush." They smiled at each other in the snow, possibility hanging between them like a promise. Maya went home that night feeling something she'd forgotten existed. Not just hope, happiness. She checked on Zoe, sleeping peacefully, paid some bills, made tea. Then, scrolling Twitter while the kettle boiled, she saw the trending topic. Hashtag Mercer Tech IPO. Her blood went cold. The article loaded slowly, each word a knife. Ryan Mercer's company was going public. IPO scheduled for 6 months from now. Expected valuation, $800 million. Ryan's personal stake, $500 million. The prospectus listed him as founder, CEO, and chief technology officer. Every patent was in his name. Every innovation she'd built, credited to him. There was a video interview, Ryan in a black turtleneck playing Steve Jobs cosplay. "I built this company from scratch. Late nights, impossible problems, breakthroughs at 3 in the morning. My ex-wife handled scheduling and some administrative work, but the technical vision was always mine." Maya's hands shook. The mug slipped, shattered on the floor. Hot tea everywhere. Zoe woke crying. Maya stood frozen, torn between her screaming daughter and the screaming in her own head. He'd stolen everything. Her work, her story, her proof that she was good at what she did. And in 6 months, he'd make $500 million from it. Maya didn't sleep that night. She scrolled through Mercer Tech's S1 filing until her eyes burned. Every page was a lie. Every innovation attributed to Ryan had been her work. The authentication system she'd built from scratch, Ryan's patent, the scalable architecture that handled millions of users, Ryan's genius. The blockchain integration that venture capitalists drooled over, all Ryan. By dawn, Maya had made a decision. She called James. "It's 6 in the morning," he answered, voice rough with sleep. "Did you know about the IPO?" Silence, then, "Yes." "How long have you known?" 2 months. "Maya, I wanted to tell you." She hung up, grabbed Zoe, grabbed her bag, took the subway to Portland Ventures' office in Flatiron. James was already there, coffee in hand, looking exhausted. "Let me explain. You used me, hired me to get inside information about Ryan. That's not—" He stopped. "Okay, partially, but I hired you because you're brilliant. The rest came later." "What rest?" James opened his laptop, pulled up a folder labeled Mercer. "I've been investigating Ryan for months. I passed on investing in Round B because something felt off, so I dug deeper." He showed her internal Slack messages, GitHub histories, emails, all proving Ryan couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. When he goes public, he'll be committing securities fraud, lying to investors about his capabilities, about who built the technology. Maya sank into a chair. "Why show me this?" "Because when the IPO happens, someone needs to expose him. Someone with inside knowledge, credible evidence, and standing." James met her eyes. "Someone like you." The SEC moves slowly. By the time they investigate, "I don't mean the SEC, not yet." James closed the laptop. "I need you to go back. Work for him again. Document everything from the inside. Then right before the IPO, we expose him. Publicly, completely. He loses everything. Maya's stomach turned. You want me to face him every day? I know what I'm asking, but he's about to make $500 million on your work. Legal revenge is the only kind that lasts. What do you get out of this? James was quiet for a moment. I passed on a potential unicorn. That decision haunts me. If I can prove Ryan's a fraud, I rewrite that story. He paused. Plus, I really hate bullies. Maya thought about Zoe, about the hospital debt still crushing her, about Ryan's interview where he'd reduced her to a secretary. How would it work? You apply under your maiden name. You've changed enough. Different hair, weight loss from stress, new style. He won't recognize you. You document everything. Right before IPO day, we leak it all. That's corporate espionage. No, exposing fraud isn't espionage. You'd be protected as a whistleblower. Maya stood, walked to the window. Manhattan stretched out below, indifferent and eternal. If I do this and it goes wrong, I lose everything. Again. If you do nothing, he wins forever. It wasn't about revenge, Maya realized. It was about truth, about making sure the world knew who'd really built Mercer Technologies. Okay, she said, I'll do it. 2 weeks later, Maya applied to Mercer Tech as Maya Collins, senior back-end developer. She'd changed her hair from blonde to dark brown, lost 30 pounds from stress, wore glasses now. In the professional headshot, she looked nothing like Ryan's exhausted, pregnant ex-wife. The interview was surreal. 3 rounds with people who'd worked beside her for years. None of them recognized her. She got the job. Her first day, walking into the Tribeca office that used to be hers, felt like descending into hell. Everything had changed. Foosball tables, kombucha on tap, motivational posters about disruption and hustle. Ryan walked past her in the kitchen, made eye contact, said nothing. He didn't recognize her, didn't know her. No, 3 years of marriage, and he'd never really looked at her. Maya spent 2 months documenting everything. Screenshots of code commits showing Ryan copied from Stack Overflow. Slack messages where he asked junior developers to fix things he claimed to understand. Videos of technical meetings where he couldn't answer basic questions. She sent encrypted files to James every night, built an ironclad case. This wasn't just about exposing Ryan. It was about protecting every woman who'd been erased from her own story. Maya and James met twice a week at a coffee shop in Chelsea. Their meetings were professional, but something else simmered underneath. Glances that lasted too long. Accidental hand touches. One night after a particularly good evidence coup, James said, Emily used to say I only understood things through work, that I couldn't separate business from life. Was she right? Yeah, she died thinking I cared more about the fun than her. I didn't, but I never knew how to show it. He looked at Maya. I'm trying to be different now. With me, if you want that. Maya did, but it was messy. The revenge plot, the feelings, the constant fear of discovery. Let's get through this first, then we'll figure out us. They held hands across the table. It wasn't a relationship, not yet, but it was something. 1 week before the IPO, everything was ready. The evidence, the whistleblower complaint, the press strategy. James had contacted reporters. Maya had prepared her statement. They just needed to make it to IPO day. Then on Tuesday morning, Maya arrived at the office to find security waiting. Maya Roberts, come with us. Her blood went cold. They knew. In the conference room sat Ryan, his lawyers, HR, and Sloan. The influencer girlfriend wore a smirk that could cut glass. Ryan leaned forward. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? That I'm that stupid? Maya forced calm. I don't know what you're talking about. Nice try, Sloan held up her phone. Instagram algorithm showed me photos from your friend Diana's private account. Your baby has a very distinctive birthmark. A birthmark. Maya had been undone by a birthmark. Ryan stood. Corporate espionage, fraud, violation of NDA. I could have you arrested. I signed no NDA, and exposing fraud isn't espionage. We'll let a jury decide that. His lawyer slid papers across. Restraining order. You're not to come within 500 feet of Mr. Mercer or company property. Maya's hands shook. You stole my work. The world deserves to know. The world knows what I tell them. Ryan's smile was cruel. Oh, and one more thing. We're filing for emergency custody evaluation, claiming parental instability. The room tilted. You can't take Zoe. I'm her father. You're broke, working multiple jobs, living in a shitty apartment. Who do you think a judge will favor? This is about silencing me. This is about burying you again. Ryan nodded to security. Get her out. Maya was escorted through the office in front of everyone, her belongings in a box dumped on the sidewalk like trash. She called James, sobbing. They met at a coffee shop. James looked like he'd aged 10 years. My board found out. Someone tipped them off. Found out what? About us. About the plan. They were calling it collusion, market manipulation. They're threatening to pull all funding from the fund, $300 million. Maya understood before he said it. You're pulling out. I don't have a choice. Marcus, our portfolio companies, everyone's jobs. So I'm alone. James reached for her hand. She pulled away. I thought you were different, she said quietly. Maya, please. I need to go. I have a custody hearing to prepare for. She left him sitting there and walked into a Manhattan that felt colder than ever. The eviction notice was taped to Maya's door when she got home. Behind on rent. 3 days to vacate. Inside, the apartment was silent except for Zoe's baby monitor. Maya checked on her daughter, sleeping peacefully, unaware that their world was collapsing again. Maya's phone rang. Diana. The custody hearing's Friday. Ryan's lawyers are vicious. They're painting you as unstable, broke, multiple jobs, no permanent housing. I'm not unstable. I'm surviving. I know, but judges see numbers, not effort. After Diana hung up, Maya sat on the floor. Her laptop was gone, seized by Mercer Tech. All her evidence with it. James had abandoned her. Ryan was taking Zoe. She'd lost before. But this time felt different. Final. In the bathroom cabinet, she found the leftover Vicodin from her C-section. Postpartum pain medication. She hadn't needed them in months. Maya poured the pills into her palm. 23 of them, enough to make everything stop hurting. She looked at herself in the mirror. When had she become this person? This defeated, broken version of herself? The baby monitor crackled. Zoe stirred, made a small sound. Maya went to the nursery. Zoe's eyes fluttered open. She looked at her mother and smiled. A real, genuine, full-faced smile. Maya broke down. Sobbing, she held her daughter. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy almost... She couldn't finish the sentence. Back in the bathroom, she flushed the pills, one by one, watching them disappear. Okay, she whispered to her reflection. One more time. You fight one more time. Wednesday morning, Diana showed up with coffee and a USB drive. I've been digging. Todd Harrison, Ryan's CFO. He wants to talk. Todd? Maya remembered him. Quiet, nervous, always looked guilty about something. Why would he help me? Guilt, apparently. They met at a financial district coffee shop. Todd looked terrible, sweating, shaking, barely making eye contact. I forged your prenup, he said without preamble. Maya's world stopped. What? Vegas, 3 years ago. Ryan paid me $50,000. We got you drunk. You thought you were signing hotel receipts. I witnessed it, backdated it, made it legal. He slid the USB drive across the table. Signed affidavit, email records, bank transfers, everything. Why are you telling me this? Todd finally met her eyes. I have 2 daughters, 7 and 5. What if someone did this to them? His voice cracked. I'm already going to hell. Might as well do one good thing first. Diana immediately understood the implications. This proves fraud. We can invalidate the prenup, sue for your share of the company. Not in time, Maya said. The IPO's tomorrow. Custody hearings Friday. They sat in silence. Legal channels were too slow. By the time courts processed anything, Ryan would be worth $500 million and have custody. Maya's mind raced. Ryan cared about one thing, his image, his story of being a self-made genius. What if that story was destroyed publicly? immediately. We need someone with a platform, Maya said slowly. Someone people will listen to. Diana frowned. Who? Maya smiled without humor. Someone who hates him as much as I do now. That afternoon, Maya stood outside the Tribeca loft, violating the restraining order, but past caring. She texted Sloan, I know you're home. Check your email. We need to talk. She'd sent Sloan everything. The offshore accounts in Ryan's name, the divorce papers his lawyers had drafted 2 months ago, planning to dump her immediately after the IPO, the prenup forgery. All of it. 5 minutes later, Sloan came down. She wore athleisure and fury. He's leaving me? After everything I gave up? He used you, like he used me. Sloan's Instagram perfect face twisted. What do you want? Revenge. The kind that lasts. Maya showed her Todd's evidence. Tomorrow, Ryan rings the opening bell at NASDAQ. Cameras everywhere. You have access, 10 million followers, and a platform. You want me to expose him. Live. I want you to tell the truth, that you're not just a pretty face, that you see through men like him. Maya paused. You'll be a hero, the whistleblower who took down a fraud. Sloan considered this. Maya could see the calculations, the book deals, the speaking tours, the respect she'd always craved but never got. What do you get out of this? My daughter, my story, proof that I built something worth $500 million. Sloan held out her hand. That motherfucker. Let's burn it all down. They shook. Two women wronged, finally fighting back. Thursday morning, Times Square, 7:30 a.m. The NASDAQ market site gleamed under television lights. Camera crews from CNBC, Bloomberg, and Fox Business set up for the biggest tech IPO of the year. Ryan Mercer stood inside, perfectly styled, custom suit, fresh haircut, the confident smile of a man who'd won everything. Executives surrounded him, his lawyers, his board members, everyone ready to ring the opening bell and make millions. Sloan arrived at 7:45 unannounced. Her hair was perfect, her red dress camera ready, her smile bright enough to hide everything underneath. Surprise, baby, she kissed Ryan for the cameras. I had to be here for your big day. Ryan looked confused but played along. This was being broadcast. Had to look perfect. At 7:58, 2 minutes before opening bell, Sloan pulled out her phone. Good morning, everyone. She went live on Instagram. 10.2 million followers logged on. I have something important to share about my husband on this very special day. Ryan's face shifted, confusion to concern. CNBC noticed, swung cameras toward her. For the past year, I've been living a lie. Sloan's voice was steady, clear. And so have all of you. She pulled up her tablet, started displaying evidence on camera. Ryan Mercer did not build Mercer Technologies. His ex-wife, Maya Collins Roberts, did. Here's proof. Git commits, code comparisons, Slack messages, all displayed in high definition for millions to see. He forged legal documents to steal her work. Todd's affidavit, clear and damning. He lied to investors about his technical capabilities. Video clips of Ryan unable to answer basic questions. And he planned to divorce me the moment this IPO closed. The draft divorce papers, his offshore accounts, everything. The NASDAQ floor erupted. Executives shouting into phones, lawyers scrambling, the bell never rang. Sloan looked directly into the camera. Women aren't accessories. We're not stepping stones, and we're done being silent. She ended the stream. 10.2 million viewers, 2 million shares in 3 minutes. The video went viral faster than anything in internet history. CNBC's anchor struggled to process. We're witnessing unprecedented. The IPO is being halted. Trading stopped. SEC investigators materialized. Ryan tried to leave, but security blocked the exits. The facade cracked. The genius crumbled. The fraud was exposed. Across the city in an Astoria coffee shop, Maya watched on her phone. Zoe sat in her lap, babbling at a toy. Tears ran down Maya's face. Not revenge. Relief, Diana called. Custody hearings canceled. Ryan's lawyers withdrew everything. And Maya, the settlement offers are already coming in. How much? 8.2 million. Fair compensation for your intellectual property. Maya looked at Zoe. We won, baby. Mommy won. 6 months later, winners settled over New York. Ryan's company sold for parts, bankrupt. He was under federal indictment, securities fraud, forgery, tax evasion, facing 10 to 15 years. Sloane's tell-all book, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, hit #1. She started a foundation for women leaving abusive relationships. Todd Harrison testified, got immunity, rebuilt his life with his daughters. Maya paid off her medical debt, all of it. $487,000 became zero. She bought a modest brownstone in Park Slope, not a mansion, just home. Started Collins Technology Consulting. Small, 12 employees, all women or underrepresented founders. One afternoon, someone knocked on her office door. James Portland stood there, looking rough, thinner, tired. "Can I come in?" Maya considered making him leave, but curiosity won. "What do you want?" "To apologize. I was a coward. I chose money over doing what was right." He sat without invitation. "I lost the fund anyway. Investors pulled out when the fraud went public. Said I should have known sooner. I'm sorry that happened. Don't be me. I deserved it. I had one chance to be brave and I failed." He pulled out a business card. "I'm starting over. New fund, smaller, focused on female founders, people the industry overlooks." "Good for you. I'd like you to be my first partner. Equal equity, equal decisions. Not because I'm rescuing you, because you're the smartest person I know." Maya took the card, studied it. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't, but I'd like the chance to earn it back." She considered, not the business opportunity, the personal one, the possibility. "I don't need rescuing." "I know, but partners could work. Equals." They shook hands. Partners. As he left, Maya called after him. "James, coffee sometime?" He smiled, a real smile. "I'd like that." The conference room overlooked Lower Manhattan. Same view as 3 years ago. Different building, different meaning. Maya sat across from Ryan Mercer, but this time the power balance had shifted completely. Ryan wore a cheap suit, work release program from minimum security. He'd served 18 months, had 3 years left. The tech genius looked old, gray, diminished. "Why are you doing this?" His voice was quiet, defeated. Maya slid papers across the table. "I'm buying your remaining IP assets. All patents, all code, all trademarks. For $1. That's everything I have left." "Yes." "You're destroying me." "No." Maya's voice was calm. "I'm releasing the code. Open source. Free for everyone. Because innovation shouldn't be locked behind lies." Ryan stared at the papers. "I'm sorry, I know it doesn't matter. But I'm sorry, I see it now, what I did. It matters a little, just not enough. What happens to me? You serve your time, you rebuild, or you don't. That's not my problem anymore." She stood. James waited in the hallway, gave her a supportive smile. They'd been together for a year now. Real relationship, equal partners in business and life. "Let's go home," Maya said. Spring in Park Slope was beautiful. Trees blooming, children playing, the neighborhood alive with possibility. Maya's brownstone was modest but perfect. Renovated kitchen, small yard, room for a home office. Zoe, now 4 years old, raced through the hallway. "Mommy, James is making pancakes." "With chocolate chips?" Maya called. "Obviously." James appeared, flour on his shirt. They'd moved in together 6 months ago. Slowly, carefully, building something real. Diana arrived with her 2 kids for a play date. Prospect Park? Perfect. Marcus and his daughter came too. The group walked through the park, kids running ahead, adults talking about everything and nothing. Sloane called during lunch. They were friends now. Not close, but connected by shared history. "My skincare line needs a tech consultant for the app. Interested? Send me the details." Maya's office walls held framed articles. Forbes named her startup one to watch. Tech magazines profiled her as a founder who'd overcome. She didn't love the attention, but understood its value. Her story helped other women. That evening, the chosen family gathered in the brownstone. Diana, Marcus, their kids, James, Zoe. Pasta night, everyone talking over each other, comfortable chaos. Zoe tugged Maya's sleeve. "Mommy, can girls be programmers?" Maya knelt down. "Baby, girls can be anything. Don't let anyone tell you different, even astronauts, especially astronauts. After dinner, after everyone left, after Zoe fell asleep, Maya and James sat in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, she was drying, domestic in the best way. "You okay?" James asked. "Today was hard. Seeing Ryan?" Maya considered. "It was closure. I don't hate him anymore. I just don't think about him. That's growth." They moved to the couch. James pulled out a small box. "Before you panic, it's not what you think. Not yet, anyway." He opened it, a silver locket engraved with 4 initials, M, J, Z, and E. "Emily?" Maya asked softly. "She should be part of this. She'd like you. You're both stubborn and brilliant." He fastened the locket around Maya's neck. "When Zoe's older, I want her to know who you were before all this. The woman who fought when she had nothing." Maya's eyes filled. "You make me sound heroic." "You are." They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the city continued. Sirens, traffic, life happening without pause. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if that night hadn't gone wrong?" Maya asked. "If my laptop wasn't stolen, if we never met?" James considered. "Then I'd still be a man who thought kindness was just a word, and you'd still be walking through rain, convincing yourself you were alone. We found each other by accident. Best accidents usually are." Maya looked around her home. Not perfect, not a fantasy, but real and earned and hers. She thought about the woman who'd signed divorce papers in tears, who'd lost everything and believed she was nothing. That woman still existed inside her. The scars remained. She still had nightmares sometimes, still struggled to trust, still saw therapists every week. But she'd survived, more than survived, built something new from the ruins. People asked if she'd gotten revenge. She didn't know how to explain that revenge and justice weren't the same thing. She hadn't destroyed Ryan to hurt him. She'd exposed him to free herself. The difference mattered. Maya checked on Zoe one last time before bed. Her daughter slept peacefully, stuffed rabbit clutched tight. She had no memory of the hard years, would grow up stable, loved, knowing her mother was strong. Back in her own room, James was already asleep. Maya slid under covers, exhausted but content. Her phone buzzed. Email from a founder she'd mentored. Subject: "We got funded." Maya smiled. This was the work that mattered now, helping others avoid her mistakes, building systems where talent was recognized regardless of who claimed credit. She responded with congratulations, then turned off the phone. Tomorrow, she'd handle Collins Technology's quarterly review. Next week, she'd speak at a Women in Tech conference. Next month, she'd testify before Congress about intellectual property protections for technical spouses. The calendar was full. The work continued. But for tonight, she had enough. Maya closed her eyes and felt something she'd once thought impossible. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, the presence of purpose. She'd signed at Bombers in tears once, but she'd rebuilt with strength, and that made all the difference. Monday morning, Collins Technology Consulting buzzed with energy. The office occupied 2 floors in Brooklyn Heights, windows overlooking the East River. 12 employees, all brilliant, overlooked by traditional tech. Maya reviewed quarterly numbers with her team. Revenue up 30%, client retention at 95%. They were profitable, sustainable, growing. "Boss?" Rachel, their lead developer, knocked on Maya's office door. "Senator Harrison's office called. They want you to testify next month." "About?" "Intellectual property protections, specifically for technical work and divorces." Maya had become an accidental advocate. Her story resonated. Congress was drafting legislation. Her nightmare might prevent others. "Tell them yes." James met her for lunch at a cafe near the Brooklyn Bridge. They tried to keep work separate from life, but their worlds overlapped constantly. His fund had invested in 3 of her recommendations. All were thriving. "How's the senator thing?" he asked. "Terrifying. I hate public speaking." "You spoke at 3 conferences this year." "Still hate it." Maya picked at her salad. "Diana's worried I'm taking on too much." "Are you?" Maya considered. Between the consulting firm, the advocacy work, being a mother, and maintaining a relationship, her schedule was insane. But it was her choice, her chaos. "I'm busy," not broken. There's a difference. James reached across the table. But if you need to slow down, I don't. Maya softened. I appreciate you checking, though. They'd found a rhythm, two intense people learning to be partners without losing themselves. It wasn't always easy. They fought about work-life balance, about Zoe's schooling, about whose turn it was to grocery shop, but they fought fair, and they never stopped showing up. That afternoon, Maya picked Zoe up from pre-K. Her daughter raced out, backpack bouncing. "Mommy, I made you a picture!" The drawing showed three stick figures. One labeled Mommy, one James, one Zoe. They were holding hands under a rainbow. "It's beautiful, baby." "That's our family," Zoe said proudly. Maya's throat tightened. Family? They'd built one. Not traditional, not perfect, but theirs. At home, while Zoe played, Maya opened her laptop. Email from an unexpected sender. Ryan's sister, Catherine. Subject, thank you. The message was brief. Catherine explained she'd cut ties with Ryan after the fraud was exposed. She'd always suspected, but chose family loyalty over truth. Now she was ashamed. "What you did wasn't just about you," Catherine wrote. "Our family's company money came from our grandfather's patents. Patents he stole from his female lab partner in the 1950s. Your case made me research. I'm trying to find her descendants, make amends. You showed me that silence is complicity. Thank you." Maya sat back, stunned. Her fight had rippled outward in ways she couldn't predict. She replied simply, "Thank you for telling me. Doing the right thing is hard, but worth it." Evening brought Diana for dinner. Her friend looked exhausted but happy. Public defender work was brutal but meaningful. "I used your case in court last week," Diana said over wine. "Woman whose ex-husband claimed her business as his. Judge remembered your testimony from the news. Ruled in her favor." "Really? You're changing things, Alyssa, slowly, but it's happening." They talked until late, about work, about kids, about how exhausting it was to keep fighting systems designed to erase women. "Do you ever regret it?" Diana asked. "Going public? The scrutiny?" Maya thought about the hate mail she still got, the trolls who called her bitter, the think pieces about women playing victims. "Sometimes, but then I get emails from women who documented their work because of my story, who protected themselves. It's worth it." Later, after Diana left and Zoe was asleep, Maya and James sat on their small patio. Spring air, city sounds, comfortable silence. "I talked to my therapist about the wedding," James said suddenly. They'd been together a year, living together 6 months. The topic had come up occasionally. Maya always deflected. "And?" She asked what I was afraid of. James looked at his hands. "I'm afraid of losing you like I lost Emily. I'm afraid of committing and watching everything fall apart." Maya took his hand. "I'm afraid too. My first marriage was a disaster. What if I'm bad at this? What if we're both just scared people trying our best?" "That's very mature of you." James laughed. "Therapy's expensive. I should sound wise occasionally." They sat with that, two damaged people choosing each other anyway. "I don't need a ring," Maya said, "or a big wedding, but I need to know you're staying." "I'm staying, even when it's hard, even when you drive me crazy with your work schedule, even when you leave dishes in the sink." Even then. They kissed, not passionate, comfortable, the kiss of people who'd chosen partnership over perfection. Inside, Maya checked her bank account, old habit from broke days. But now the numbers were different, stable, secure. She'd paid off all debt, medical, credit cards, everything. Had savings, emergency fund, college fund for Zoe. The difference between 6 figures of debt and 6 figures of savings was more than numbers. It was freedom. Space to breathe. Maya pulled up photos on her phone. Zoe as a newborn, tiny and fragile. Zoe at 1, taking first steps. Zoe now confident and joyful. 3 years. Everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. Marcus sent a group text to her, James, and Diana. "Drinks Friday to celebrate Maya's Senate testimony confirmation?" Diana, "Only if Maya promises not to talk about code." James, she can't help herself." Maya, "I resent that. I also talk about architecture." Marcus, "You're all nerds. Friday 8 p.m., that bar in Williamsburg." Their found family. Maya had spent years building Ryan's dream. Now she was building her own. Not an empire, a life. That night, Maya dreamed. Not nightmares about signing papers or losing everything. She dreamed about teaching Zoe to code, about testifying in Congress, about James proposing somewhere ridiculous. She woke at dawn, James still asleep beside her. Through the window, Brooklyn was waking up. Delivery trucks, early commuters, the city starting its day. Maya used to hate mornings. They meant facing another impossible day. Now they meant possibility. She checked on Zoe, made coffee, opened her laptop, emails from clients, from mentees, from journalists wanting interviews. Once she'd been erased. Now she was heard. The difference was everything. Washington, D.C. in June was oppressive. Humid, crowded, monuments gleaming white against hazy sky. Maya stood outside the Russell Senate office building, adjusting her blazer. James squeezed her hand. You've got this. I'm terrifying at public speaking. You've spoken at 3 conferences. I know what I said to you. Maya smiled despite her nerves. But thanks. Diana appeared, professional in her court suit. She'd taken the day off to support Maya. Marcus video called from New York, Zoe visible in the background at his apartment. Mommy, are you talking to the government? Yes, baby. Be good for Uncle Marcus. She's teaching my daughter to code, Marcus said proudly. 4 years old and already understanding variables. Inside, the hearing room was smaller than Maya expected. Senators sat elevated, witnesses at tables below, media in back rows, cameras ready. Senator Harrison, the one who'd invited her, smiled warmly. Ms. Collins-Roberts, thank you for being here. Maya sat, microphone too close, lights too bright. Every instinct screamed to run, but she stayed. Please tell us your story. Maya spoke for 20 minutes, no notes, just truth. She explained how she'd built Mercer Technologies' infrastructure, how everything was registered under her ex-husband's name, how she'd signed a forged prenup while drunk, how she'd lost everything. The current legal system doesn't recognize technical contributions in divorces, Maya said. Code, architecture, systems design. If it's not formally copyrighted, it doesn't exist in court. Senator Michaels, skeptical, leaned forward. But Ms. Collins-Roberts, couldn't you have protected yourself, documented your work? Maya met his eyes. When you trust your partner, documentation feels paranoid. The system punishes trust. What would you change? Automatic joint ownership of intellectual property created during marriage. Mandatory technical audits during divorce proceedings. Criminal penalties for forged prenups. Maya paused. And cultural change. Stop asking why women didn't protect themselves. Start asking why men steal credit. The room was silent. Senator Harrison smiled. Thank you. Your testimony will inform the Digital Assets in Divorce Act we're drafting. After, in the hallway, journalists swarmed. Maya answered questions until her voice went hoarse. Then she, James, and Diana escaped to a bar near Union Station. You were amazing, Diana said. I was terrified. Terror and bravery looked the same from outside, James added. They flew back to New York that night. Maya exhausted, emotionally drained, but satisfied. She'd used her platform, made her nightmare mean something. At home, Zoe was asleep on Marcus's couch. He'd built her a simple website, her first project. About Me by Zoe Collins. Maya's heart swelled. Her daughter would grow up knowing women could build, create, own their work. The cycle would end with Zoe. 2 months later, Maya was in her office when Rachel knocked urgently. Boss, you need to see this. On Rachel's laptop, a news article. Senate passes Digital Assets in Divorce Act, signed by President. The law Maya had testified for was real. Technical work would be recognized in divorces. Prenup forgery carried federal penalties. Intellectual property had to be audited. It wouldn't help Maya. Her case was closed, but it would help others. Diana called, screaming with joy. We did it! We actually changed the law! That night, Maya's team threw an impromptu celebration. Small gathering, champagne from Trader Joe's, genuine happiness. Sloan sent flowers with a card. You changed the world. Even Maya's estranged mother called. They hadn't spoken in 6 years. I saw you on the news, Patricia said awkwardly, testifying. Mom, I was wrong about you, about everything. Her voice cracked. I'm proud of you. Maya cried, not from forgiveness, that would take time, but from acknowledgement, from her mother finally seeing her. Thank you for calling. Maybe we could have lunch when you are ready? Maybe, Maya said. I'll think about it. After she hung up, James found her in the bedroom. Otowaru. You okay? My mom called. He sat beside her. How do you feel? Confused? Angry? Hopeful? Maya leaned against him. She abandoned me when I got married. Said I was making a mistake. Now she's proud. People are complicated. I hate that you're right. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, Brooklyn lived its life. Inside, Maya processed hers. I think I want to see her, Maya said finally. Not forgive, just see. I'll come with you if you want. Thank you. That fall, Collins Technology expanded. 2 more employees, bigger office. They were competing with major consultancies now. Maya was profiled in Wired, the engineer who became an advocate. The article was fair, accurate, honest about her struggles. She cried reading it, not from pain, from recognition. She existed now, in court records, in legislation, in cultural memory. Her story was documented, protected, hers. Ryan couldn't erase her anymore. At Zoe's preschool graduation, Maya sat between James and Diana. Her daughter received a certificate for Best Builder after creating a block structure that impressed teachers. She gets it from you, James whispered. She gets it from herself, Maya corrected. We're just giving her the space to grow. After the ceremony, Zoe ran up. Mommy, I want to build robots when I grow up. Then you will. Can girls build robots? Maya knelt down, held her daughter's face. Baby, there's nothing in this world that you can't do if you decide to do it. Nothing. Zoe hugged her tight. I love you, Mommy. I love you too. That night, after Zoe slept, Maya updated her will. Everything to Zoe, with trustees until she turned 25. But also instructions. Letters explaining what had happened, why it mattered, how to protect herself. Her daughter would never be erased. James found her at the desk, crying over legal documents. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Maya wiped her eyes. I'm just making sure she knows, that she's prepared, that she understands her worth. She will, because she has you. They went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight there was peace. Maya had signed papers in tears once. Now she signed them in strength. The difference was everything. 5 years after the divorce, Maya stood in her Park Slope kitchen, making breakfast. Zoe, now 7, sat at the table attempting homework. James was somewhere upstairs, probably still in bed because it was Saturday. Mommy, how do you spell engineer? Maya spelled it out. Why? Career day. I'm telling my class I want to be an engineer like you. Something in Maya's chest loosened. She'd spent so long proving herself to the world. But this, her daughter seeing her as worth emulating, this was the real victory. That's perfect, baby. The doorbell rang, Diana with her kids, Marcus with his daughter, all arriving for Saturday brunch, their weekly ritual. James appeared, finely dressed. I'm making pancakes. With chocolate chips? 3 kids shouted in unison. Obviously. While adults cooked and kids played, Maya checked her phone. Email from Senator Harrison's office. The Digital Assets in Divorce Act had helped its first major case. A woman in California had proved her contributions to her ex-husband's software company. She'd won 50% equity. Maya forwarded the article to her team with a simple message. This is why we fight. Rachel responded immediately. Boss, you're crying at brunch again, aren't you? Shut up. But she was smiling. After brunch, after everyone left, Maya and James took Zoe to Prospect Park. Their daughter raced ahead, chasing pigeons, laughing. I've been thinking, James said carefully, dangerous. About the partnership, business partnership, making it official. Maya stopped walking. We already have the legal paperwork. I mean marriage. James pulled out a small box. Before you panic, I'm not proposing here. I just want you to have this. To think about it. No pressure. Inside was a simple ring. No diamond, just a band with three small stones. Ruby for you, sapphire for me, emerald for Zoe. Past, present, future. Maya's eyes filled. James, you don't have to answer now or ever. I just want you to know I'm ready, whenever you are. She kissed him, soft, gentle, certain. Ask me at home, tonight, after Zoe's asleep. Really? Really. That evening after dinner, after Zoe's bath and bedtime story, Maya found James in their bedroom. He was nervous, pacing. Okay, so I didn't plan a big speech. James, yes. But I want you to know. James, does. He stopped, looked at her. Ask me, Maya said simply. He knelt, not gracefully, kind of awkwardly. Very them. Maya Collins Roberts, you're the strongest person I know. The smartest, the most stubborn. He smiled. Will you marry me? Yes. Really? That fast? Did you want me to make you sweat? Kind of. Maya laughed, pulled him up, kissed him properly. Yes, I'll marry you. But small wedding, just family. None of that Plaza Hotel nonsense. Deal. They married 3 months later. Brooklyn, courthouse, 10 people total, Diana as maid of honor. Marcus as best man, Zoe as ring bearer, taking her job very seriously. No media, no spectacle, just two people choosing each other. At the small reception in their brownstone, Diana toasted. To Maya, who taught us all that surviving isn't enough. We have to thrive. Marcus added, and to James, who finally learned that love means showing up even when it's scary. Zoe, drinking juice from a champagne glass, giggled. You're all silly. That night, after everyone left, the three of them sat in the living room, Zoe between Maya and James on the couch, fighting sleep. Mommy? Yes, baby? Are you happy? Maya looked at her daughter, at her husband, at the home they'd built. Yes, I'm very happy. Good, Zoe yawned. Me too. After Zoe finally fell asleep, Maya stood by the window. Brooklyn stretched out before her. The same city where she'd signed divorce papers in tears, where she'd given birth alone, where she'd rebuilt from nothing. James joined her. What are you thinking? That I'm glad it happened. The divorce, all of it, the pain, the struggle, the fear. Maya leaned against him. Because it led here, and here is exactly where I'm supposed to be. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city live. Maya thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago. Broken, desperate, convinced she was nothing. That woman still existed somewhere inside. The scars remained. She still had bad days, still struggled with trust, still woke from nightmares sometimes. But she'd built something stronger than his pain. A life of purpose, a family of choice, a legacy of change. People asked if she'd forgiven Ryan. She hadn't, but she'd released him. Stopped letting his actions define her story. Forgiveness wasn't the goal. Freedom was. And she was finally free. 3 years earlier, she'd sat in a conference room and told Ryan that winning wasn't about revenge. It was about getting herself back. She'd been right. Looking at her reflection in the window, stronger, older, scarred but whole, Maya barely recognized the woman she'd become. That was the point. She wasn't the same person who'd signed papers in tears. She died that day. The woman standing here was someone new, someone she'd built from ruins, someone who understood that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about rebuilding better. Her phone buzzed. Message from a mentee. I documented everything like you said, filed for divorce today, scared but ready. Maya responded, you've got this. I'm here if you need me. This was her purpose now, not building companies, building women up, making sure they knew their worth, protected their work, never signed anything in tears. James kissed her forehead. Ready for bed? Soon. I just want to stand here a minute. Take your time. She did, watching the city, feeling the weight of her ring, listening to her daughter's soft breathing from the other room. 5 years ago, she'd lost everything. Today, she had everything that mattered. The difference was she'd learned what mattered. Not revenge, not billions, not proving anything to anyone. Just this, home, family, purpose, peace. Maya turned from the window, took James's hand, and walked toward their bedroom. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Her consultancy would grow. Her advocacy would continue. Zoe would have questions about why her parents had different last names. But tonight there was enough. She'd signed the divorce in tears. She'd signed the marriage certificate smiling. And that, Maya thought as she turned off the lights, was the truest victory of all. If Maya's story moved you, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is just the beginning. And subscribe because we're telling more stories about people who refuse to stay down. Your story isn't over, it's just getting started.